I was 58 years old when I signed the papers for the villa in the Alps, and I still remember the way my hand shook holding that pen. Not because I was nervous about the money. I'd already spent most of my life making money, enough money to survive 2 recessions, put my son through college, survive a brutal divorce, and still retire early with enough left over to finally think about myself for once. No, my hand shook because for the first time in decades, I was doing something that belonged only to me. Not my ex-husband, not my son, not my family. Mine. The villa sat above a small mountain town just outside Aspen, tucked away behind snow-heavy pine trees and winding roads that looked almost unreal at sunrise. It wasn't one of those flashy celebrity mansions with glass walls and indoor waterfalls. It had warmth, stone fireplaces, massive windows overlooking white slopes and frozen lakes, dark oak floors, a wraparound balcony that looked like something from an expensive holiday catalog, the kind of place where silence actually felt peaceful. I bought it without telling anyone except my realtor and my attorney. That probably sounds strange, but secrecy had become a habit after my divorce. My ex-husband, Gary, had spent 28 years treating every achievement in my life like it somehow belonged to him. Even after the divorce, people still acted like my success came from our marriage, as if I hadn't built my consulting business practically alone while he golfed his way through middle management. By the time I met my daughter-in-law, Melissa, I already recognized the signs. Charm, calculated sweetness, tiny little comments hidden behind smiles. Oh wow, this wine is expensive. You always stay at places like this? I hope Ethan learns how to provide like his mom someday. Little things. My son Ethan never saw it. Of course he didn't. Melissa had this soft, blonde, suburban perfection about her that made people underestimate her. She spoke gently, laughed at exactly the right moments, touched your arm when she talked to you. She knew how to make people feel guilty for questioning her, and Ethan worshipped her. I tried. God knows I tried. I welcomed her into the family, paid for part of their wedding when they were drowning financially, helped Ethan cover the down payment on their first condo, bought furniture for their nursery after my grandson Noah was born. Every time I gave them something, Melissa acted grateful for about 5 minutes before it transformed into expectation. The first time it truly hit me was 3 years earlier during Christmas dinner at my old house in Denver. Melissa was standing in my kitchen sipping wine while I cooked, and she casually said, "Honestly, when you eventually downsize, this house would be perfect for us." Eventually. Like my life was already over. I laughed it off at the time, but I never forgot it. After that, I started noticing the way she looked around my home whenever she visited. Not admiring it, evaluating it, mentally arranging herself inside my life. Meanwhile, Ethan drifted further away every year. Not cruelly, just gradually. Calls became shorter, visits became obligations. Every conversation somehow circled back to money, stress, daycare costs, mortgage rates, inflation. I knew what was happening. I was becoming less of a mother and more of an asset. That realization hollowed me out in ways I still can't fully explain. So when I bought the villa, I kept it quiet. I wanted one thing untouched by other people's expectations, one thing that existed outside the gravity of family obligations. For almost 4 months, nobody knew. I flew out alone twice to oversee renovations. I furnished the place myself. Every room reflected exactly what I wanted. Deep cream-colored couches, vintage whiskey cabinets, thick wool blankets, soft lighting, oversized bookshelves. The upstairs master suite had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the mountains. The guest room stayed intentionally simple, comfortable but not luxurious. And downstairs, hidden behind a custom walnut panel near the library, was my favorite room in the entire house. A private lounge, soundproof, dimly lit, a full bar, old vinyl records, leather seating, a temperature-controlled wine wall. And in the back corner, concealed behind another hidden door, was a small room with a biometric lock. Nobody knew about that room. Not yet. The irony is, I actually planned to tell Ethan about the villa eventually. I imagined inviting him, Melissa, and Noah for Christmas after the renovations were finished. Maybe we'd reconnect. Maybe being away from their stressful suburban life would help.
But life has a funny way of exposing people before you're ready. It happened in late November. I was in Chicago for a business dinner when Ethan called me unexpectedly around midnight. He sounded unusually cheerful. "Mom, guess what?" "What?" "We're thinking about making a big change." That sentence alone exhausted me. "Oh?" "Yeah. Melissa found this amazing opportunity for remote work, and honestly, we've been talking a lot about wanting a fresh start." I leaned back in the hotel chair. "A fresh start where?" There was this brief pause. Then he laughed. "Well, funny story." That tone immediately put me on edge. "Melissa found your villa listing online." I froze. My stomach dropped so hard it physically hurt. "What listing?" "The original luxury listing before it was removed." "Mom, this place is insane." I sat upright slowly. "How do you know it's mine?" "Melissa connected the LLC name to your business records." Of course she did. For several seconds, I couldn't even speak. Then Ethan continued, sounding excited, oblivious.
"We were actually thinking maybe this could work for everybody." There it was. Not congratulations, not happiness for me, utility. I closed my eyes. "What exactly are you saying?" "Mom, hear me out before you react." That sentence made my blood pressure spike immediately. "We could move there." I laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh. "No." "Mom." "No. You haven't even heard the full idea. There is no full idea where my retirement home becomes your family relocation plan. You'd barely even use all that space." And there it was again, the entitlement. Like my life only counted in terms of efficiency. I stood up from the hotel chair and walked toward the window overlooking downtown Chicago. "Ethan, I bought that house for myself." "But why that huge?" I actually stared at the phone. Why that huge? As if I needed to justify joy. As opposed to what? Dying quietly in a condo somewhere? That's not what I meant. "Then what did you mean?" He sighed heavily, already irritated. "Mom, we're struggling here. You know daycare alone is killing us financially." And you have this massive place sitting empty most of the year." The anger that hit me then surprised even me. Not because he wanted help. Parents help their kids all the time. It was the assumption, the ownership already forming in his voice. "I am not discussing this tonight," I said flatly. Melissa's voice suddenly appeared faintly in the background. "Ask her about the guest wing." Guest wing. She'd studied the listing carefully. Something cold slid through me. I lowered my voice. "Are you both seriously discussing moving into my house without even asking me first?" "We are asking." "No, you already decided. That's why you're calling like this." Ethan went quiet. That silence told me everything. By the time I flew back to Denver 2 days later, Melissa had already texted me Pinterest screenshots of cozy alpine nursery ideas. I wish I were exaggerating. She sent them like we were already planning a family vacation. This would look adorable in Noah's room. Noah's room. Inside my house. I didn't answer. Then came another message. "We're so excited for this next chapter together." Together. I sat in my kitchen rereading that text over and over, feeling something ugly growing inside me. Because suddenly, I understood something I should have realized years earlier. Melissa didn't see me as a person. She saw me as infrastructure, a resource, a stepping stone, an aging woman occupying assets she believed should eventually transfer downward. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure Ethan disagreed anymore. A week later, they showed up unannounced at my Denver house. Melissa carried coffee like she was walking into a negotiation meeting she already intended to win. Ethan hugged me awkwardly while Noah ran into the living room. Then Melissa smiled brightly and said the sentence that changed everything. "We already started looking at schools near Aspen." I stared at her. Actually stared. "You what?" She sat down calmly at my kitchen island, like she owned the place. "The schools there are incredible, way better than what we have here." I looked at Ethan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I realized this wasn't fantasy anymore. They had genuinely built plans around my property without my permission. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I felt something close to fear around my own family. Because people who slowly convince themselves they deserve your life become dangerous in ways that don't look dangerous at first. They smile while they do it. Melissa opened her tablet and started pulling up floor plans of my villa. Actual floor plans. We were thinking the downstairs guest suite could become Noah's room temporarily while Ethan converts the upstairs office into a second nursery eventually.
Second nursery. I hadn't even known they were trying for another baby. I felt dizzy. You're trying for another child? Melissa smiled softly and rubbed Ethan's arm. We wanted to surprise everyone. Then she looked back at the tablet. As long as we all communicate, I think shared living could actually be amazing. Shared living. She still hadn't asked, not once. And sitting there in my own kitchen, watching another woman calmly redesign my future while my son stayed silent beside her, I realized there was something about that villa they still didn't know.
Something hidden inside it. Something that would make Melissa freeze the second she stepped through those doors. And when that moment came, nothing in this family was ever going to survive it. The first snowfall hit Aspen the same week Ethan and Melissa decided they were officially moving in. Not asking, not hoping, deciding. That was the part that kept crawling under my skin at night. I'd spent weeks trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were just excited. Maybe Melissa had a pushy personality and Ethan was caught in the middle. Maybe once I firmly said no, things would settle down. Instead, the exact opposite happened. Melissa accelerated. Every conversation became about logistics, school districts, winter tires, internet providers in mountain areas. She started sending me furniture links for shared spaces, as though the arrangement had already been approved by lawyers and signed in blood. And Ethan? God, Ethan disappointed me more than she did. Because at least Melissa was transparent in her ambition. My son hid behind passivity. He kept speaking in these carefully neutral phrases. We just want everyone happy. We think this could really bring the family together. You know we'd help around the house. Help around the house. As if my villa was some aging burden, instead of the one thing in my life that still felt untouched. I finally snapped during dinner at their condo in Denver. Melissa had made salmon.
Noah was coloring on the floor while Ethan opened wine. The entire evening felt staged, like they were trying to perform happy family unity long enough for me to surrender out of exhaustion. Then Melissa casually said, I talked to a designer today about child-proofing the balcony railings. I set my fork down slowly. You talked to who? A designer in Aspen. Just preliminary ideas. You hired a designer from my house? Her smile flickered slightly. Not hired. Then why are you discussing renovations? Ethan immediately jumped in. Mom, don't make this hostile. Hostile? I looked at him in disbelief. Your wife is redesigning my property before I've even agreed to let you stay there. Melissa leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms gently, still composed. Honestly, Linda, I think you're taking this way too personally. That sentence almost made me laugh. Too personally. As though my own home was an abstract concept. I bought that villa for myself, I said carefully, not as a multi-generational family compound. Melissa tilted her head slightly. But you'll be alone there. The room went still. Even Noah stopped coloring for a second. I looked directly at her. Excuse me? You know that's true, Ethan muttered. Melissa. No, I'm serious, she continued calmly. I think sometimes wealthy people isolate themselves and call it independence, when really they're just lonely. I actually felt heat rise into my face.
Not because the comment hurt, because it revealed how she saw me. Not as a mother, not as a woman, as a problem to solve, a lifestyle inefficiency. You think this is about loneliness? I asked quietly. I think you're scared of change. I stared at her for several long seconds before standing up from the table. No, I said softly. I think you've mistaken my kindness for ownership. Then I grabbed my coat and left. Ethan called 6 times that night. I ignored every single one. 2 days later, I flew to Aspen alone. I needed distance from them, space to think, space to breathe without Melissa's voice floating through every corner of my mind like perfume you can't wash out. The drive up to the villa felt different this time, heavier. The mountains looked sharper somehow, colder. Snow covered the pines in thick layers, while freezing wind swept across the road in ghostly spirals. When I finally reached the property, relief hit me immediately. The villa stood glowing against the snow-covered landscape, warm amber light spilling from the massive windows. For a moment, seeing it again reminded me why I bought it in the first place.
Peace. I unlocked the front doors and stepped inside. Silence wrapped around me instantly. The scent of cedar wood and fireplace smoke lingered in the air. Soft jazz still played from the speaker system I'd forgotten to turn off during my last visit. This place felt like me in a way no other home ever had. Not wife me, not mother me, just me.
I poured myself whiskey and sat near the fireplace for almost an hour, staring at the snow outside. Then my phone buzzed. Melissa. I considered ignoring it. Instead, against my better judgment, I answered. "Hi, Linda," she said brightly, too brightly. "What?" "We have exciting news." Already I felt exhausted. "What news?" "We found movers available next weekend." I nearly dropped the glass. "You what?" "Timing-wise, it's actually perfect because Ethan can transition to remote after New Year's." "No." Silence. Then Melissa laughed softly like I was joking. "Linda." I said no. This time my voice came out hard enough to cut glass. "I am not sharing this house." A pause. Then for the first time since I'd known her, Melissa's sweetness cracked slightly. "Well, Ethan deserves part of your estate eventually anyway." Estate. Not home. Estate. I stood up so fast the whiskey splashed onto the floor. "I'm still alive." "Obviously," she said coolly. "But families help each other." "No," I replied. "Entitled people say that while taking things." Another silence. Longer this time. Then Ethan came onto the line. "Mom, can we not do this?" I laughed bitterly. "Do what? Acknowledge reality? You're acting like Melissa's stealing from you. She's planning permanent renovations in a property she doesn't own. She's trying to make it functional for everybody. Everybody. Not me. Everybody." I suddenly felt incredibly tired. "You know what?" I said quietly. "Come see the villa." Both of them went silent. Then Melissa spoke carefully. "Really?" "Yes." "When?" "This weekend." Truthfully, I hadn't planned that sentence before saying it, but the moment it left my mouth, something settled inside me. A decision. If they wanted the fantasy so badly, I would let them walk directly into it. "Perfect," Melissa said immediately. "Oh my God, Noah's gonna love the snow." I hung up without another word. That night, I barely slept, not because I feared conflict, because I knew exactly what was waiting downstairs behind the biometric door. The next morning, I walked through the villa slowly, room by room. The kitchen gleamed beneath pendant lighting and marble countertops. The great room looked straight out onto white mountains disappearing into cloud cover. Every detail still felt carefully chosen, personal. But downstairs carried ghosts. I stood in front of the hidden walnut panel for almost a full minute before pressing my thumb against the concealed scanner. The panel clicked softly. Inside, the private lounge glowed dimly beneath amber lighting. Most people would have assumed it was just an upscale entertainment room. Expensive whiskey, vinyl records, leather furniture. But hidden deeper inside was the room nobody knew existed. Not Ethan, not Melissa, not even Gary during our marriage. I walked toward the second hidden door and entered the secure room quietly. Cold air greeted me immediately. Steel shelves lined the walls. Locked filing cabinets, hard drives, photographs, contracts, video backups. And in the center of the room sat a black fireproof case. I stared at it for a long time. 27 years of secrets lived inside that case. Secrets capable of destroying reputations, marriages, careers, including my own family, especially my own family. Because the truth was, my consulting business hadn't only made me wealthy, it made me dangerous. During my career, I'd worked with politicians, executives, real estate developers, attorneys, private investors, crisis management, corporate negotiations, confidential settlements. People trusted me because I knew how to bury disasters quietly. Affairs, harassment scandals, financial cover-ups. The wealthy don't eliminate scandals, they relocate them. And over the years, I learned something horrifying about powerful people. Most corruption doesn't happen in dark alleys. It happens over catered lunches and golf weekends. I kept records because eventually I stopped trusting anyone, including my own husband. especially after I discovered Gary had been secretly using my business contacts for private investment deals behind my back during our marriage, deals that nearly destroyed us financially 15 years earlier. What Gary never realized was that I documented everything once I became suspicious. Phone calls, transfers, emails, evidence. Enough evidence that during our divorce, he accepted my settlement demands without a fight, because he knew what I possessed. But Gary wasn't even the worst secret in that room, not even close. The worst one involved Ethan, or more specifically, Melissa. I opened the fireproof case slowly. Inside were several folders organized alphabetically. I pulled hers out carefully. Melissa Carter Whitmore. Even seeing her full name made my chest tighten. The folder wasn't thin, far from it, because 6 months before Ethan proposed to her, I hired a private investigator. I told myself at the time it was protective instinct, mother's worry. Successful women become cautious. But deep down, maybe I already sensed something off about her. The investigator found more than I expected, much more. Old lawsuits, credit fraud accusations, a relationship with a married financial advisor in Phoenix, deleted social media accounts tied to luxury arrangement circles. Nothing technically criminal, but enough to reveal a pattern. Melissa attached herself to wealth strategically. Every serious relationship in her adult life involved older or financially established men. Then came the part I never told Ethan. The financial advisor she dated before him had transferred over $90,000 into accounts connected to Melissa during their relationship. 2 months later, his marriage collapsed. 3 months after that, Melissa moved to Denver, where she conveniently met my son.
At first, I planned to confront her privately. Then Ethan fell hopelessly in love, and I hesitated, because parents spend their entire lives terrified of becoming the villain in their children's love stories. So I buried the file, until now. I sat there holding the folder while snow hammered the windows upstairs, and for the first time, I seriously considered destroying her life. Not out of revenge, out of survival, because suddenly I understood something terrifying. Melissa wasn't trying to move into my villa because she loved family closeness. She was securing territory, and if she got comfortable enough inside that house, she would never leave. By Friday evening, Ethan texted me they were already packing for the weekend trip. Melissa added 3 heart emojis beneath his message. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone. Then I looked toward the hidden file room downstairs, toward the evidence that could detonate everything. And I realized the villa wasn't the only thing Melissa had walked into uninvited. She'd walked directly into my war room. They arrived Saturday afternoon just before sunset. I watched their SUV climb the snow-covered road from the upstairs balcony, headlights cutting through thick falling snow, while wind whipped across the mountains hard enough to shake the pine trees. For a brief second, seeing Ethan behind the wheel hit me emotionally in ways I didn't expect. Because no matter how angry I was, part of me still saw the little boy who used to fall asleep in the back seat after ski trips, his cheeks red from cold weather and hot chocolate. That's the cruelty of family. Love doesn't disappear just because disappointment arrives. The SUV finally stopped in front of the villa. Melissa climbed out first. Of course she did. Even bundled in an expensive white coat and snow boots, she somehow looked staged for a luxury lifestyle ad. She stared at the villa with visible hunger before Ethan even finished unloading Noah from the back seat. Not admiration, possession. I could recognize the difference now. The front door opened before they reached it, because I already knew Melissa would interpret waiting as weakness. The second she stepped inside, she froze. Not because of the hidden room, not yet. Because the villa itself was far beyond what she expected. Pictures hadn't prepared her. The ceiling stretched nearly 20 feet high above the great room. Massive windows overlooked snow-covered mountain ranges, glowing pink beneath the setting sun. The stone fireplace roared with heat, while soft jazz echoed quietly through built-in speakers. Melissa's mouth physically parted open. Oh, my God. Ethan looked stunned too. Noah immediately ran toward the giant windows, yelling about the snow. And for one small, dangerous moment, I almost softened. Then Melissa whispered something she probably didn't realize I heard.
This is worth way more than the listing price. There it was again. Value. Always value. Not beauty, not comfort, not happiness. Asset evaluation. I took their coats calmly, while Melissa wandered farther inside without waiting for permission. Her eyes scanned every inch of the home rapidly, mentally cataloging details like a real estate investor walking through a property before acquisition. "The ceilings are incredible," she murmured. "Jesus, Ethan, look at these finishes." Ethan finally looked at me. "Mom, this place is insane." I smiled faintly. "Thank you." Melissa turned slowly in the great room. "How many square feet?" "About 9,000. Her expression changed instantly. 9,000. You could practically see her future calculations multiplying behind her eyes. Then she spotted the staircase leading upstairs. "Can we see the bedrooms?" Not may we. Can we? Already moving before I answered. I led them through the house carefully. The upstairs master suites silenced them both completely. The room overlooked endless white mountains through floor-to-ceiling glass. A fireplace flickered near the bed, while soft lighting reflected off dark wooden beams overhead. Melissa walked straight toward the windows, like she'd entered church. "This can't be real," she whispered. Then she looked at Ethan. "This would literally change our lives." Our lives. Not yours, not Mom's, ours. Ethan nodded slowly, clearly overwhelmed himself.
And that's when I realized something painful. He genuinely believed this fantasy could happen. Melissa had sold it to him completely. She turned my retirement into their salvation story. We continued through the rest of the upstairs. Melissa became more aggressive with every room. This would make an amazing nursery. Oh my God, Noah could have this whole wing. We could convert this office into a media room. Every sentence. By the time we reached the downstairs lounge area, my patience had already thinned dangerously. The hidden walnut panel remained closed beside the library shelves. Melissa noticed it immediately. "What's behind there?" I kept my expression neutral. "Private space." "Oh." But I caught the flicker in her eyes. Curiosity, suspicion, possibly challenge. Dinner that night felt like theater. I cooked steaks while Melissa drank wine and increasingly behaved like hostess instead of guest. She moved comfortably through the kitchen, opening cabinets without asking. Ethan helped Noah build blanket forts near the fireplace, while snowstorm winds rattled the windows outside. And the whole time, Melissa kept talking about the future. School schedules, holiday traditions, summer renovations. Like resistance no longer existed. At one point, she actually said, "I think once we settle in here, the stress levels will completely disappear." Settle in here. I finally put my wine glass down. "Melissa?" She smiled immediately. "Yeah?" "You keep speaking as though this arrangement already exists." A small silence hit the room. Ethan looked down instantly. Melissa stayed calm. "We're just excited." "No," I replied evenly. "You're assuming." Her smile tightened slightly. "Linda, honestly, I think everybody's making this harder than it needs to be." Everybody. Interesting wording considering only one person owned the property. I folded my hands together slowly. "Explain something to me." "Okay. Why do you believe you belong here?" The room went still. Even Ethan looked uncomfortable. Melissa blinked once, clearly surprised by the directness. "I don't think we belong here," she said carefully. "Then why are you acting like future residents instead of visitors?" A pause. Then came the performance voice, soft, measured, almost wounded. "Because I thought families shared things." "There's sharing," I said quietly, "and then there's occupation." Ethan sighed heavily. "Mom." "No, let's talk honestly for once." Melissa sat straighter now. "You know what I think?" she asked calmly. I nodded once. "I think you've spent your whole life controlling everything, and now you don't know how to handle people entering your space." I almost laughed. Control. The irony was breathtaking. "You entered my space before I invited you." Her eyes hardened for the first time all evening. "Ethan is your son, and I am still alive." Silence again. Then Noah wandered sleepily into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, instantly breaking the tension. Melissa softened immediately, scooping him into her arms like nothing happened. Watching her switch emotional masks that fast unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. That night, after everyone went upstairs, I stayed downstairs alone near the fireplace, drinking bourbon. Around midnight, I heard footsteps. Melissa.
She entered the great room wearing silk pajama pants and one of Ethan's sweatshirts. Her makeup was gone now. Without it, she looked younger, sharper somehow, more dangerous. She poured herself wine without asking and sat across from me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Snow hammered the windows. Finally, she looked at me directly. "You investigated me, didn't you?" Every muscle in my body locked instantly. I kept my face neutral. "What?" "I'm not stupid." Neither of us moved. Then she smiled faintly. Honestly, I respected it. I stared at her. "What exactly are you implying?" "I know powerful women." She swirled her wine slowly. "Women like you always vet people before letting them close." Her tone stayed calm, too calm. I realized something then that made my pulse spike. She didn't know what I knew, but she suspected something existed. "How much did you find?" she asked softly. I leaned back slowly. "Enough." That answer landed harder than I intended. For the first time since I'd known her, uncertainty crossed her face, just briefly.
Then she recovered. Everybody has a past. Some people build their future out of other people's wallets. Her jaw tightened. "There it is." I said nothing. Melissa looked toward the fire for a moment before speaking again. "You know what's funny? You think I'm some manipulative gold digger because I like security. I think you calculate people. And you don't?" That one hit. Because unfortunately, she wasn't entirely wrong. "You built an empire consulting wealthy men through scandals," she continued quietly. "You think I don't know that?" Now my turn to freeze. "How do you know about my clients?" She smiled faintly. "Linda, Ethan talks." I felt cold instantly. Not physically, emotionally. Because Ethan had no idea how confidential much of my work had been over the years. "How much has he told you?" "Enough to understand who you really are." That sentence lingered between us like smoke. Then Melissa leaned forward slightly. "You think I'm dangerous because I survived by attaching myself to successful people. I think you use intimacy strategically." She laughed softly. "That's adorable coming from someone who spent 30 years monetizing secrets." The room went dead silent. For the first time, I truly saw her. Not the charming suburban wife, not the smiling mother, a survivor, an opportunist, a woman who had spent years studying power dynamics until emotional manipulation became instinct. And suddenly, I understood why she unnerved me so deeply, because she mirrored parts of myself I hated. "You don't love Ethan," I said quietly. That finally hit her. Real anger flashed across her face. "You don't get to decide that. I think you chose him. Everybody chooses." The honesty of that response stunned me. No denial, no fake outrage, just truth. Then she stood up slowly. "And for what it's worth," she said coldly, "I do love him now." Now, interesting word. Before walking away, she paused near the hidden walnut panel downstairs. Her fingers brushed the wood lightly. "What's really in there?" I looked directly at her. "The reason you should stop trying to move into this house." For the first time since arriving, Melissa looked genuinely unsettled. But instead of backing down, she smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Then she went upstairs. I barely slept after that conversation. At around 3 in the morning, I heard movement downstairs again. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then came a soft click. My eyes opened instantly. Someone was in the lounge. I got out of bed quietly and moved toward the upstairs hallway overlooking the lower level. A dim light glowed downstairs, and there she was, Melissa, standing beside the hidden walnut panel, trying to figure out how to open it. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up, strangely calm, because the moment someone starts hunting your secrets, the game changes permanently. I watched silently from the shadows upstairs while she examined the bookshelf and wall seams carefully. Then she found the concealed scanner. Her face lit up instantly. A biometric lock. Now she knew for certain. Something valuable was hidden inside. She glanced around once more before pulling out her phone. And then I watched my daughter-in-law do something that made my stomach drop. She started recording video, documenting the room, the panel, the scanner, the hidden entrance. Evidence, not curiosity, leverage.
And standing there in the dark above her, I finally understood something horrifying. Melissa hadn't come to the villa hoping to become family. She came hunting for ownership.